Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 227, February 3rd, 2022. That's right. January's left behind in the dust. We're into February. This is our new format show. We are just the two of us again, I believe, tonight. Myself, TowerMaster99, and Mr. Game Logic. Game, how's it going tonight?
We'll see. It depends on how the rest of the podcast goes. I don't know if it's YouTube acting up or... I was on a podcast last night, the Basement Arcade podcast, Brap, I forget what the R stands for, and he mentioned there were some problems with YouTube as well. So it looks like there's some weird blips going on that appear not to be on my end, so hopefully things will remain stable.
Okay. Let's hope for the best here for tonight. DB was supposed to join us tonight too. He may still, maybe, but more than likely not. So hopefully we'll see him in a little bit. If not, it'll just be, once again, just the two of us, as it was last week. A little twofer. All right, so up first, we got our new releases and our news stories. It looks like we just got a lot of games, actually, we've been playing lately, or at least a couple of us. I picked up 2 new games. Actually, technically 3, I guess, but the one I haven't had a chance to play yet. But the 2 I have played, which is pretty much all I've been playing for the most part this past week. The first one, we'll start with Zenith, The Last City, or Zenith, as I've heard some people call it. So this is actually, I'm playing this on the Oculus, or I guess Meta Quest 2. This is a VR game that I'm actually playing through the PC, so I actually bought it off of Steam, so I'm using the link cable to my Oculus, which, I mean, this one, graphics, well, let me start here first. So this is I wouldn't say the first MMO that's been on the Oculus, but it is the first one I bought, and it's, I guess, I'm not really an MMO guy, not normally, and it was a little bit kind of weird for me to even buy this game, but because I don't usually play MMOs. I've tried a lot. I've tried WoW, World of Warcraft back in the day. I only lasted like a month on that one. Elder Scrolls Online every once in a while I'll jump into and kind of go in there and do a few missions, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay. I don't have anybody to play with, so it gets kind of a little bit boring. But this one, I don't know, maybe it's just because it is, like I mentioned before, the VR, just kind of more interactivity that you have. You can do sword fighting if you want. You can do magic. Uh, there's kind of like these gauntlet things that you kind of wear that kind of act as guns that you can use. So it's a little more active. Kind of walking around, and you can put your arms out and you kind of not really fly, but kind of glide around the area. I think that's been done in other games. I think that you can do that. I shouldn't say I think, but you can do that in Population 1, which is a battle royale game. But this one, you're in this, I guess, just this land. I don't know if it's supposed to be Earth even, or just some like random planet somewhere. But I kind of start off. You do your customization. You pick either. For right now, there's only like 2 classes. There's a mage, so like a magician or mage, or blade master, which you only use. Obviously, you only use swords when you're using the blade master. The mage now, it's kind of weird. Obviously, you use magic, but you also have these 2, like I said, gauntlets that you use to kind of just shoot out these beams. So that's kind of like, I guess, your kind of primary weapon. Like it's probably the weakest of the things you can get. Obviously, you can like build up your magic and power those up. There's kind of the regular stuff, lightning and fire and like ice. So I think there's like a wind ability too. I've gotten 1 wind ability so far that I've seen. So you start off on the city, and you kind of go through the tutorial and stuff, and then you kind of just let out into the world, and you can there's random. Well, I shouldn't say random. Certain spots in these maps and these areas, there's NPCs that you talk to and get your quests from. That's pretty much like any other MMO, even just RPG. So you just do different quests, and you can party together with other people. And there's proximity chat, so you're always kind of hearing people as you're going past other people or other groups. So that's kind of nice. If you're a bunch of times when I've been playing mostly with my friend, when we've been walking around and doing stuff, and we kind of get lost or we don't know how to do a certain thing, we just ask a random person, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, we try to help you out." So so far everybody's been pretty cool, when you're playing here. So you get the the random screaming child or running around every once in a while, but it's pretty few and far between. So it's just kind of nice. But overall, though, it's been a pretty good experience. This came out last Thursday, so about a week ago. I jumped on actually right after the podcast, and I was playing with my friends. So we played that Thursday night and then the Friday night, and then I didn't get I only had like a couple other days that I've just played for a little bit, so I haven't gotten too far into it. But he's more of kind of like a I guess you want to say like power leveler or like speed leveler. So he kind of just runs through the quests and just wants to do them like really quick, just so he can level up and get the best gear, which is fine. I mean, it's fine. I can when I first started out, he wasn't on yet, so I was kind of just playing through it myself. And a couple of the last times I played, I only played like an hour or so. I was kind of just doing my own thing, so I was able to kind of go back and just kind of go through the story and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice, but it's fun. Obviously with most games, it's fun to play with somebody, especially if somebody So, but a lot of times, like there's dungeons and stuff that you go in, and if you're by yourself, you're pretty much dead unless you're like a higher level. But it's kind of nice because it's you always have other people around, so you can just jump in with that group and try to fight these like higher level enemies. So I think right now I'm at 20, I believe. I got to level 20. I'm not sure what the cap is. I thought my friend said it was 50, but I'm not sure. So I'll have to look that up, or if there even is a cap. I'm assuming there is. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun right now. And I did mention there's 2 classes right now. They actually just mentioned they're going to make a second one, Ninja. I think it was called Ninja Mage or Mage Ninja. So it's kind of like more of stealthy, and more hand-to-hand combat, kind of a character. I guess they'll be able to do some kind of magic. They didn't really go into too much detail, but that's kind of like the roadmap. And I don't know, they didn't even mention like when that's going to come out, but that's probably another character I'll actually try to create. So it sounds actually kind of cool. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that so far.
How do you like that perpetual life of playing games in early access in the VR world? Is that like just becoming like a normal for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the games are like that. And actually, this one I didn't even realize. I thought it was like just got full release. Which I mean, they did release everything, but even they themselves say, yeah, this is pretty much like it's an early access game, game preview game. So, but I mean, I don't know, for the most part, I mean, they all seem to be pretty stable so far. The ones that I've played. There's other ones that like, and even just on the Oculus itself, they have like I forgot what they call it, like the Oculus Lab, or there's some kind of like name they have for it. Where those I've played, and they're like, oof, these are rough. Like those are really rough. But the ones that actually get released, those are actually they have been pretty good. I think what was the other one? Well, I guess after the fall, I think that was a full release. They didn't really call that a preview, but there was kind of a preview play that they did beforehand. And even then, seemed fine. So, but yeah, I mean, even just not on VR. I mean, there's a lot of like game preview games now that I buy a lot of times now. It's just like, oh, it looks pretty cool. I want to play it, but it's not too bad though. Yeah, I haven't seen anything too crazy. There's bugs here and there, like you see somebody that kind of like melts into the floor or something, or into a rock when you're going around the world. But I mean, I've seen that in other games too, so nothing too crazy yet, at least. But they did. I mean, those servers were getting hit pretty hard. I guess that first day. Like, I'm glad I kind of went on later at night because I didn't really have too much troubles getting in. They had a pretty good amount of servers that first day, and they've just expanded since then. So you can get it pretty easily now. So yeah, it's been a pretty good experience so far. Right. Any other questions for that one?
No, man. So this is so that's an MMO. You've been playing another RPG in VR. Is that also an MMO, or is it just co-op or multiplayer or whatever?
Probably Legendary Tales. I think is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think this is the one that you reported on, like the first time that you reported out on what the quest was like.
Yeah, it's probably Legendary Tales. Yeah, that one is just the co-op one. Yeah, so you're always just there with just who's in your party. So
okay,
yeah.
Is it the same group of people that you're playing with, or different groups?
Yeah, same group. Yeah.
Okay, all right, very cool.
Yeah, that's good, fun. And there's also there's been some other side things that I haven't gotten to yet. Like you can do cooking and stuff. Like literally, like you'll drop to like this kind of like kitchen counter looking thing, and then you can like do all these like recipes and stuff. But I haven't figured out how to do that part yet. I just because that gives you a lot of buffs. I guess I was reading up on it. So it obviously powers up your your offense and your magic, and obviously you get better defense and stuff like that. But I haven't really done too much of that. I can make like a cookie now, which I did once, and I was like, okay, cool. But that just gives you like health back, which your health does regenerate like when you're not fighting and you stand still for like 10-20 seconds or so. So I don't know. I guess like in the heat of battle, obviously you want to you can't just sit there and stop. So that stuff's pretty important to do. But yeah, I still gotta go through that. So, and then there's some of the when you're screwing around with the magic stuff, like you can power it up, and there's like different levels and stuff. I have to look through that a little bit more because I think I got it down, but I gotta watch like a YouTube video or something just to make sure I don't like delete something by mistake, because you can like you'll have like different like say for like magic, you have like say for like ice, there's like this ice or a fire. There's just like a fire circle like you throw down. So then when I'm in the fire magic menu screen, they have like different tiles of the same thing, but they have like different numbers, like 1, 2, some are different colors. So I'm assuming like obviously there's like gray, I think green and blue so far that I've seen. So I'm assuming those are like different higher tiers. So I just gotta like figure out what the color scheme is, just like every other game. But sometimes they switch. What the green and blues or something, mean. Gray, I'm assuming, is probably like the lowest, so we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to keep on going with that one. And then the second game I've been playing is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which came out last Friday, so the following day. So kind of two big games that were, kind of, take up my time. And actually, Pokemon I've probably been playing the most of both of these two. And this is open worldish, I guess. I mean, it seems pretty much open world. You kind of unlock the areas, and then once they're unlocked, obviously you can kind of go back and forth between the areas. But you can just go around. I don't want to give away like the story and stuff, so I can't really say like what's going on here. But you're kind of in the past. Excuse me. You get dropped at this village, And this is the same area, I believe, that's in Diamond and Pearl that just came out a few months ago, last year. But just in the past, like the ancient past, like I don't know, a few hundred years or whatever. I don't think they even really said. But you can, kind of like in Pokemon Sword and Shield, you can see the Pokemon in the world when you're walking around, which is nice because I think that was one of the reasons I didn't like the older games. Like you kind of just hit like random encounters all of a sudden, which I never really liked, especially when you're trying to like run away from an area that might be, you're underpowered for. Here you can see all the Pokemon everywhere. So it's kind of nice. You can just go up to them. You can go up and fight them, or you can just go and like throw a Pokeball and just catch them like right off the bat. So you won't even fight them, which is kind of cool too. So I kind of like mix like the Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go and Pokemon Sword and Shield kind of mixed together. So you can kind of do both, which is nice.
Are there any constraints on like trading in this one? I mean, how have they handled the thing overall? I remember, and of course, I'm not a Pokemon fan, not a Pokemon player, but so, I mean, it seemed like there was a schism at some point where like you could only get back so far in the chronology of the games, and so you couldn't trade everything you've been collecting forever. You could just trade everything from like a certain point in time forward. What is it now? Is it maintain that business pipeline of like, from that point forward you can continue trading, or is this like its own new thing, or just kind of have they disappointed everyone else again from the trading aspect?
Well, they disappoint a lot of people. Well, I get to that, why they disappointed some people in a minute. But as far as the trading, I think as far as I can tell, you can only trade within like what's in the game right now. And I think maybe, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but since it's in the ancient past, like you won't have like obviously the present day Pokemon that you would have. I think that's maybe how they got around that part of it. And then in Sword and Shield, there's a big area called the Wilds where you can go and you can actually play with other people. Like there's kind of like what they call like raids, where there's like a giant super max Pokemon that usually had to have other people there to help you take down. Here, there's no area, as far as I can tell, or no place that you can do that with. The only thing I've seen is just like a straight up trade, and it looks like you have to have like the code from the other person to actually trade with somebody. It's not like random like you could in Sword and Shield, which is kind of disappointing. Like I kind of like you can just send out like a random Pokemon and you'd get one in return. This one you actually have to. Just as long as you connect to the internet. This one you have to actually have like someone's friend code basically, but it's just a Pokemon code, as far as I can tell. So I think that's how it used to be, like back when you're like doing it on the DS and 3DS and stuff like that, and or if you had like a link cable, obviously back on the Game Boy or something. So that's a little bit disappointing for me. Not a huge deal. I mean, I was never a big trader anyways, but sometimes it's kind of nice just to send something along and get something back. You'd get something like super powered, so that's kind of cool. But the other. So what people are kind of disappointed at now, and I think maybe now that the game actually came out, and they see the gameplay and stuff, they're kind of like, okay, it's not so bad. But a lot of people were kind of down on the game originally before it even came out because of the graphics. It's not super, people were thinking like Breath of the Wild kind of graphics, which, yeah, it looks good in Breath of the Wild, and even the open world area kind of obviously looked pretty good. But here in this one in Arceus, it's as far as I've seen right now, I've only seen like kind of flat lands and forest, a little bit of forest area, but the trees obviously are not super detailed. The grass is like you'll see like a patch of grass, like a big patch of grass, and it's kind of waving, but it's like the whole thing is like waving at once, so it's not like individual things or like individual blades or are waving in the wind or something like that. So I mean, it's not super detailed, but I mean the characters still look. I still say they look on par, and even the Pokemon look on par with Sword and Shield, which I never heard anybody, talk bad about because of the graphics or anything. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just because it's more of an open world, and that happens with open world games too. And they probably could have made it look better, or maybe they, I don't know. A lot of people think this is more of an experiment on Game Freak's part because this is like a Game Freak developed game, except Diamond and Pearl, I believe the remakes were somebody else, a third party. So maybe, they're just kind of experimenting, it's kind of like experimental game. This is not even official, the next gen, I think, is supposed to be 8 or 9 as far as the games go. So, but I don't know. It seems fine to me. Oh, hey, who's here? It's a wild DBqHams.
Randomly dropping in the middle of a show. So keep
That's right. Talking Pokemon right now. So
excellent.
So I was just finishing that up. You seem a little low, by the way. I don't know if that's on my end.
Okay.
Might want to.
Yeah, it could be on my end. So I'll just
Yeah.
So I have to ask, since I missed it, who's your starter?
My starter was oh man, I forgot his name now. It's the water type. I'm sorry, I forgot the.
Okay. Yes, I took.
Ashwa.
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, he's my starter. So I don't think I mentioned this, but I didn't mention this. I'm 19 hours in to the game since last week, and I'm just got past literally so when you start off, when they give you that open world to go into, there's that big open world, and then the next mission you kind of cross a bridge. Just crossed the bridge not too long ago, so I've just been in that one open world area. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun just kind of going around. Even though there's kind of the same Pokemon in that one area, I'm just going around catching them. And I think the one thing I really like about this game is the tasks they give you from the different people you can get to. And not only that, but each Pokemon has different tasks you can do. There's I don't know, I think 6 for each one, at least so as far as I've seen. Where it's pretty simple, you got to catch a certain many, Pokemon, or you got to defeat a certain many, or you got to use a certain move, or see a certain move from certain Pokemon. So I think that's kind of cool too. They're giving you some more, I guess, things to do basically. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, I really enjoy that in terms of the catch them without being seen, or have them do a certain type move. I found I lost time just trying to do that over and over again. And there's different levels of it, right? You have to catch 1 for the first level, and then 4, and you kind of move up and you get a level 10 mastery. So there's this whole other kind of quest system in there that made it a lot more, I don't know. I found it incredibly more satisfying than the early game in most recent Pokemons.
Yeah, definitely gives you a little bit more to drive through and, to get through the game. So it's kind of nice. I just got yesterday, I believe, or maybe earlier. I just got my first rideable Pokemon that I can actually ride on. So it's that big. I wasn't equipped. It's the big deer guy. I forgot his name. So I don't know how far you got into the story yet, but
not that far. No, just kind of through the first couple hours. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The first part actually I was kind of surprised. It took kind of long, to get to that first area to, that you can actually start catching stuff. So I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. So, and that was one of the things I think I heard too, and kind of that there's kind of more of a story, I guess, in this one. It's not just, and I didn't spoil anything how the story started, which kind of surprised me, and I don't want to say anything now, but I didn't expect that, they were going to go that way. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I like that. My type of story, where they're going. So, but but I've enjoyed it so far. And I was mentioning to a guy Gleason asked me about the trading from the previous game from Sword and Shield. Well, from Sword and Shield, I should say, because technically Diamond and Pearl were the previous game. But because he said, a lot of people were upset about, you couldn't trade all your Pokemon that if you've been collecting them. And as far as I can tell, you can't do that here either. As far as I know. Being able to trade all those
works for the narrative that they're doing, right?
Right, yeah, and I'd mentioned that too. It was how the story was going. It kind of made sense. Yeah, since you're in the past, that part I mentioned. I didn't mention you're in the past. So, but yeah, and it kind of when you came in, it's people were kind of poo-pooing on it because of the graphics, and I don't know. The graphics are fine to me. I mean, I was never a big graphics guy, anyways. So I mean. Like I said, the characters and Pokemon models, they look fine to me. I mean, they look just about as detailed as in Sword and Shield, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really see any big difference. So, but yeah. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on.
No, I mean, I listened to multiple podcasts about it before playing it last weekend, and I was aware of people's graphical, criticisms. It's okay. I mean, I think it's fine because Pokemon's never been a graphical powerhouse. You're not there for like the lifelike Detective Pikachu aspect of
Yeah.
the characterizations. So yeah, I found it very satisfying in terms of the graphics. Like it was enough of an upgrade to keep me interested, but also it faded away very quickly. Like once I was out in that open area and focusing on looking for Pokemon and, sneaking up on them, I wasn't necessarily worried about the graphical fidelity or the
Yeah.
textures of it.
Yeah, and the gameplay was what kind of hooked me in the first place. Like it was kind of cool that you could do that. You can, like I said, you can catch it or you can just fight it if you want to. So it's really nice. And because I like to collect things, like those first few hours, I was just going around collecting all like the tumble stones and all the different things for the different recipes you can eventually get to, but that you can do. So, and I kind of got in some trouble here and there because I went too far into a certain area that I was underpowered for. So had to run out of that, which is kind of nice because you could just run out of an area, so you're not locked into battle. So that's kind of nice too. All right, so I don't know, Game Logic, did you have any other questions or comments on Pokemon? No? All right, I'm going to jump over to you because I actually skipped him when we first started. Game Logic, what have you been playing on your PS5?
So I have been up to technically the first new game of the year, my first new game of the year, although it's old is new again. So I've been playing Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection on the PlayStation 5. Starting off with Uncharted 4, which I hadn't played before. I had played a good amount of Lost Legacy, but I'd kind of skipped over Uncharted 4. So it's interesting getting back. I've always really loved Uncharted, even though I'm not a big Sony SIE first party, gaming fan. So it's it's always surprising. There are so many comparisons of like what that game does, like comparisons to Tomb Raider, comparisons to Assassin's Creed in the way it allows like the kind of the clambering, and in my opinion, kind of does a better job of that fluidity than Assassin's Creed does. The movement in Uncharted has always been very natural and organic, and not like nuisancey and pesky and bothersome. They've done that game animation mechanic has always done a really great job of the thing that I've commented about before in games like Mirror's Edge or, like I said, Assassin's Creed, or even Spider-Man to a certain extent, where the games look so beautiful when you are in motion, but like the minute you screw up the slightest amount, like just your whole immersion in the game just completely comes crashing down. And Uncharted does a really good job of, when Nathan moves and he makes a mistake, making that feel natural and organic also, so that the animation doesn't look like a video game, right? And doesn't break that immersion for you. So I really appreciate that. It's neat to be in the new story, where it's not necessarily about he and Sully, at least on the front end. And again, I haven't played through a lot of it. And because I hadn't played through a lot of it, I probably didn't have my expectations set correctly for The Last of Us 2. One of the things that is most bothersome to me for The Last of Us 2 is I just hate flashbacks, and I hate flashbacks that are lengthy, and I hate flashbacks that rubber band around in terms of their duration. So The Last of Us 2 just kind of drove me batty, where like there's a flashback and it could be like 5 or 10 minutes, and then there's flashbacks that you're in for like an hour, and I'm like, this is not moving the story forward. I don't care about what happened before. I'll take it on faith, right? Just show it to me in a cutscene. I don't need to expend time playing this, right? Because for somebody like me who's very wrapped around the axle about the progression model and always getting better and always moving forward, I hate having these skill sets that you have in the future that allow you to do some really great things, and then they retrograde you right back to the state where you're not as good. And I'm like, I don't want to play this. Like, he's already put the suit on, right? Like, I don't need to go back in time to when he was, underpowered or depowered, or like she wasn't as good as at what she does. So, there are of course flashbacks in Uncharted, and it goes back to a time when Nathan was younger. Now, the the lore of Nathan Drake and its interrelation, with history kind of obviously harkens to my inner Indiana Jones, and so it's a little more tolerable from a story perspective than some of the other game flashbacks have been, but I could still do without it, like shave that time off the game, right, and just let me progress through the story. But I'm having a good time. It looks good on PlayStation 5. I don't feel it looks as good as, and probably understandably so, and I'm going to be a little unfair in this comparison. And I'm not making the comparison to say, Uncharted Lost Thieves Collection or whatever is trash. Legacy of Thieves Collection is trash, and this other game is great. Yeah, it doesn't look as good as Death Stranding Director's Cut. But that should be kind of understood because, Uncharted 4 Original came out 3-4 years or whatever before Death Stranding. But it just doesn't, as a remake or a remaster or whatever, it doesn't like, there are games that I've seen on PlayStation that I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's the best thing on console that I've ever seen, and I don't get that same feeling out of Uncharted 4. So the graphical fidelity kind of hits with a little less of a punch than some of the other things that I've seen, the Miles Morales and other things that are more recent. But it's a great story, it's a great animation, it's great combat, it's great action. Getting the grappling hook or whatever, again, kind of has that same effect that, I've felt in Halo Infinite, where, it just allows you to traverse the level with a little more latitude, but also a little more choice and provenance, is what's conveyed, than you constantly being constrained by, like, barely being able to scramble around the environment. So, I always enjoy my time, with Nathan Drake. I've never developed that emotional relationship where I stay invested in it, but he's like many of the archetypes that I've of course fallen in love with, Indiana Jones, Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly, many other characters in that vein. So having a good time with it for the beginning of the year.
So a couple questions. So as you're talking about the graphics, right? I mean, Uncharted 4 is a 2016 game. What mode are you playing on? Right? Because there's 3 different modes. There's the 30 frames per second 4K. There's the 60 frames at 1440, and then I'm assuming you're not running the 120 Performance Plus.
Yeah, so I'm not running the performance mode, and the 1440p, like, so the PlayStation 5 doesn't do 1440, so it's whatever interpolated, upscaled, downscaled, whatever resolution. So I'm playing. I believe that is the mode that I'm playing, and I think I'm playing at the 60 frames per second mode. So, I didn't see the point. It's, my PlayStation 5 is hooked up to a 4K monitor. I did not whatsoever see the point in playing at 120 at 1080p. But also, wasn't interested in trying to play it at super high quality at 30 frames per second. So, yeah,
that's fair. I was curious, as you're talking about the graphics and what they look like, I was curious where you were landing on that spectrum.
Yeah.
This is on my list to pick up because I've got a $10 upgrade for it because I had Lost Legacy digital. Or if you had the disc of Uncharted 4, you could do the $10 upgrade, but you've got to insert the disc all the time. So did you do an upgrade, or did you purchase it outright? So
this is one of those funny anecdotal stories that I love because I, of course, often forget what I bought and how and when. And so, I was reading about, obviously, the topic of paid upgrades and whatever is in the zeitgeist in the PlayStation news lines. And, what I felt was, bad and unfortunate, right, in the whole schema is that, like, hey, if you bought a disc and then went with the all-digital version of the PlayStation 5, which in some cases you have to because that's the only thing available, there was no upgrade path for you, right? Now, I've noticed as I've felt like certain emotions, right, and then paused, and then like a few days later kind of revisited and said, okay, what were you feeling and why? This whole topic of like the Sony paid upgrades, like, is very, for me, is very dependent upon when the turn is, right? When is the twist? And so if you go back to PlayStation 3 and 4, and you go The Last of Us coming out in late spring, summerish of 2013. The PlayStation 4 coming out holiday season of that year. The following summer, right? The Last of Us, right? Upgrade, remaster, whatever you want to call it. Admittedly, with the multiplayer, right? Comes out on PlayStation 4, and you're asked to pay full price for it again, and there was no entitlement or upgrade path right back then. And I'm like, that's a punch in the gut, right? Like that's not friendly, right? That's kind of abusive. And I wasn't super happy about the twist on Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? But I didn't feel that way at all about Uncharted, and it's been 6 years, right? And so asking to pay for that game again after a 6-year time lapse is kind of reasonable, particularly when there's that gap in progression of technology. For me personally, and again, I had no remembrance of like what I'd bought or like I said, I said I was going to buy it. I was fully expecting to have to pay $50. Brought up my console that morning before work, went to the store, and it was a $10 upgrade. So I had apparently just happened to buy it digitally, because back in last generation, I used to basically flip a coin, and like heads I'd buy digital, tails I'd stop at GameStop on my way home and get physical. But I bought digital, and so I got it for a $10 upgrade, and that to me is like super reasonable,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the $10 upgrade it's better than the $20 Spider-Man remaster that even if you, and that was a more recent game. This gives you two. It's a pretty easy purchase. And yeah, I think there were a lot of people that probably, whether or not they still had the disc or it's definitely out there. It was a bundle pack in for a number of years. Uncharted 4 was, so there's lots of options, but it's a consumer friendly move when it wouldn't necessarily have to be, because as you said, they didn't do that with previous options.
Yeah, because in fact, I'm pretty sure what I bought. I'm pretty sure I didn't buy it. It was actually not Uncharted 4 that I bought. I'm pretty certain what I actually bought was that Lost Legacy bundle, which was already discounted because Uncharted had been out for a little while, so it was like $40 or something like that, and then discounted if you were a PlayStation Plus member. So, I mean, I got it for a song and a dream.
Nice. All right, TV. Besides Pokemon Legends, Arceus, what else have you been playing?
I just want to add one more thing. So, and probably, I mean, since the graphical punch just didn't feel that significant. I will say what does feel significant, however, is the DualSense implementation. So that just adds an amazing layer, right, to the game. And there are times in the game that the implementation is a little questionable, because you feel like the thing is just constantly buzzing because Nathan's always moving, right? So there's always some vibration going on. It gets hard to really differentiate, whether the thing is on or off. You kind of sort of at certain points become numb to it. But there are points where it kind of punches you a little harder than others, particularly, no pun intended, during hand-to-hand combat. So that is a nice get in the overall package.
Yeah, last week's DLC podcast, they had somebody from Naughty Dog on, and they were talking about that they had a specific team working on the haptics and the DualSense aspects of this. So kind of the full integration of that, which is good to hear.
All right, DB, stay on the mic. What else you got for us for new releases?
Okay, so I'm only going to talk about Olli World, which reviews of that dropped today. I've been playing a pre-release copy. It comes out next week. It is a joy. It is just a complete joy. And I'm not a huge skateboarding game fan. Like if you enjoy skateboarding games, there's a lot here. It still is Olli and Olli 2. There's a lot of similarities. It is more accessible and friendly than Olli 2. Olli 2 started to get complicated, hitting X to land or hitting a button to land perfectly still exists, but it's not mandatory. It only helps boost your score. This is the kind of taking it out of reality and putting it into a dream world, right? There's been lots of comparisons that the graphical style is like Adventure Time, and it very much is. But it also is incredibly diverse and inclusive in both kind of geography and landscape, but also in the character creators and who you can be as your character. And that's been great to see as well. I think the fact that it separates itself from reality allows it to do some crazy stuff and make for some really interesting levels and a lot of fun as you're, rail grinding down giant bones and hitting all kinds of signs and billboards and waterfall jumps and things that would never be in a real actual skate park, but it applies to all the same types of tricks and moves and mechanisms that you would have in a traditional skateboarding game. And one of the things that I love about it as I've gotten further through is as you go through the story, each level, each world kind of introduces another layer of trick, whether it's grabs or manuals or rotations. It doesn't throw it all at you at once. Like it by level 4 out of 5, you're still being introduced to things, but all those things are accessible from the get-go. So there's an incentive to both go back to earlier levels and replay them with what you've learned, or if you know that they exist because they're in the menu or you've played other skateboarding games, you can do that from the beginning. And a great example of this is playing with my son, that I was going through early levels, kind of treating it as like following along with the progression of the game and learning some tricks as I go, but not necessarily understanding everything and not having played a whole lot of Olli 1 or 2 beforehand. Dabbled on it on the Vita, but my son played a lot of it. And so when he came on, even within the first couple of levels, I might have had 20,000. He was getting 80,000 points for a score because he knew what the tricks were. And so there is this real purity of skateboarding, right? Like this game can be as accessible as you want it to be because you don't have to do all the tricks. You can, if you get through a level, you keep progressing. And even some of the levels as they get higher, I really struggled with getting through, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't go back to a previous level and really enjoy it, right? Like if I think about this in a skate park type of way, I don't have to be a master at every aspect of a skate park. Like I can enjoy doing certain things and come back and keep doing that. If this was in real life, I wouldn't feel confident and comfortable doing the entire skate park or a really complicated course, but I could do bits and pieces of it. But a different player who had that comfort could wring a lot more out of it. And so it does allow you to find the enjoyment at whatever level that you're at, but also continue to give you the incentive to keep going back to learn. That I think that's the thing that is really getting me is like, I just want to keep playing it. I've lost hours to it because I'm, hitting restart, trying to get that perfect run and knowing that it's possible. And now that they're, looking at it, there's leaderboards that you're linked in with. They do some really cool things with rivals. So as you've beaten the scores of the computer characters, they start populating it in with other people's scores and rivals to give you something to chase. There's some online modes where they bring you in. There's daily challenges where it's kind of a procedurally generated course that is different each day to try for a high score on. And so there's a lot of pieces to get you in here. I think if you've ever enjoyed a skateboarding game or that the art style is something that you're interested in, there's enjoyment here. Like it will work really well as a skateboarding game for people that enjoy skateboarding games. But it also, for somebody that's never tried a skateboarding game before, if the art style attracts you, it's going to give you an easy enough on-ramp to find enjoyment.
So
yeah, when you're talking... Oh, so go ahead.
So pull something apart for me. So, because we have each all kind of been playing these games that have these do loops of asking you to do things over, right, and restart based on challenge. Any chance that you have any inkling on why it's okay and that feels okay in a game like Olli, but it does not feel okay in a game like Bloodborne.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good question, right? Like, why is the resetting of a run, more satisfying potentially to me in a sports related game than in a fantasy roguelike game?
Right, or like Trials, right? Because Prime and I have played that, right? So it's just a weird thematic thing that I haven't quite put my thumb on exactly what the difference is.
Before you answer, DB,
Yeah,
I was going to say that when you talk about it, I was thinking like Trials, like right away just popped in my head, like that's what you do in Trials. Like, you wanna keep going, you want to get that perfect run, you don't want to mess up or fall or do anything like that. You just want to go through, and just kind of get it.
And I think that some people get that out of like, Super Meat Boy or some type of, really difficult platformer that they can get that as well out of. I think my answer to it, and maybe yours as well, in terms of why it works in Trials versus why it may not in a different setting, is almost the reality connection to it. Like sure, if I was gonna run a skateboard course, I'm gonna keep doing it over and over again. If I'm gonna run a series of jumps on a dirt bike in a motocross, that somebody, if they're practicing it, they're going to keep running that over and over again. That there's a reality connection about why you keep trying something. How many times do skiing, snowboarding, all kind of feel that same way? Like, I'm okay with restarting that, because if I was on a half pipe, I'd probably be, trying it multiple times before I even would have a chance to do anything that my brain was telling me I could do.
Right, Rock Band springs to mind also, because I'm reminded of the number of times I sat like in the band room, just like constantly playing like the same section of a piece of music over and over and over again until I could get it right. And again, like, those things seem okay. You don't get frustrated to throw your controller down and walk away, but you play a Bloodborne game and you're like, what is going on, man? Why am I doing this?
Yeah, the art style too. When I first saw it, it almost kind of reminded me a little bit too of Scribblenauts, with a little bit more,
sure, a little bit of like
kind of more proportioned characters instead of kind of like that stubbly characters they have in Scribblenauts. So
yeah, it's a very approachable art style. I mean, the characterizations, there's not a whole lot of story here, but the characters are fun. The dialogue it's all, it's text dialogue, it's gibberish, it's the rare kind of, but they're endearing. They're kind of cute. There's some funny moments. I think the character designs are pretty fun, and I think that's there, because it's so disconnected from reality. There's some pretty crazy character designs, but they're also pretty fun. So it is the other piece that I didn't talk about, and this is, I think, is true in Tony Hawk. It's true in other types of, it's true in Trials, right? Like, I can get just as much enjoyment playing this game as I have watching somebody else play it. Like, because like, I'm catching things that if I'm playing, I'm not even looking at the background, because I'm so focused on how I'm landing that jump, or how long I can hold this tweak before I need to let go in order to land right. Or looking ahead at what, setting up my next jump. Where if I'm watching somebody else, I can enjoy not only the move set and the little flourishes of the board and tricks, but also there's so much going on in the landscape back here. I mean, they really make the graphical fidelity, in terms of like the creativity aspect of it, is really interesting and enjoyable. One other piece in terms of watching, you can, within the game and the leaderboards, you can also watch other people's runs. So like, whoever has the high score on that, you can watch some of those, which gives you, because there are multiple paths through it. So you can see, it's, rather than having to go out to YouTube or to Twitch to find somebody to watch a run, it's built in and integrated into the game itself, which is, I think, also an interesting feature within the kind of context of, you can get just as much enjoyment or motivation out of watching somebody else do it well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that they integrated that part into it. say something and I forgot. Oh, so I bought the original Olli, Olli and Olli 2 back on the Switch a while ago, I think a couple years ago, when it had the bundle out. And the one thing I noticed, and still looks like in this game, is that it seems to go like too, at least for me, like too fast. Like it's hard for me to kind of look ahead because I'm like trying to concentrate on my guy because there's like so much. You have to, should I grind the rail? Should I just stay on the, the road or the path? Oh, here's something in the road, so now I got to jump that. So it's like it almost seems like there's like too much going on. Does that kind of like that still now? Because it kind of seemed like it was some of the videos I saw.
Some stages where you pick up enough speed to be able to do that, but you also have enough control over your speed in most situations. Like as you learn more tricks, as you learn manuals, you can really start to slow yourself down. To some, the problem more becomes how do you speed yourself back up when you're trying to chain tricks together? Or, if you just want to speed through the level, it can get pretty hectic.
Yeah.
But you have the ability to slow that down in different ways too.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, that might be something I'll probably pick up in a year or two. So I gotta go through the old ones still. Go ahead.
So, Tal, when you say you picked up the original Olli R play, what did you play it on?
The Switch.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you that too, DB. You played it on the PS4?
Playing on that. Well, I've played both on PS4 and PS5. In part, just because I wanted to see how the reloads worked on PS4, and that they're just as fast. The hitting a restart of a level is still pretty much instantaneous. There's a longer load in between stages, but in terms of the ability to quickly get back in and restart, it's the same in terms of, it's minimal in terms of any differences.
I will say that's a difference too between the Bloodborne experiences. There's you often respawn where there's transit time and you have to get back to the thing. And then there's just a lot of hash and trash, like between you and where the actual challenge was, right? So, if you're fine and you can do, like I said, I'm talking about Bloodborne now, but I'm bringing this up because of the differences in design and like the emotional feeling you take away from it, and whether it leads to you sticking to a game and pushing through it or dropping it for some people. And I think Bloodborne's a good game, but like I said, you spawn, there's transit time, there's hash and trash between you and like where you really challenge. And so as is often the case with me, if you have to do like 17 things, you can always do the first 12 every single time, right? But your challenge starts to occur between, iterations 13, 14, and 15. And when you have to play those first 12 over and over and over and over and over again, and you can do them, and they're not just seconds, right, of encounter, they're like several minutes, right, to get back, right? And just for you to fail it all over again, that can compile into a lot of frustration. So it's interesting, the different designs.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, I wonder, you're mentioning that, like, if it's, I guess it could be a time thing, because obviously, like, in Bloodborne and Dark Souls and stuff like that, like, you kind of have to go through, like, this whole, like, 10, 15-minute ordeal, and something like Olli or Trials, it's, a few minutes, even though you might play it for hours, but that, section, once you actually finally able to do it all, it's probably only going to take you like a minute or so. It's a pretty short time.
Well, it's interesting, because I've been thinking about it, and it really relates to how people learn too, right? And and again, I go back to like practicing music, and I think about the fact that like, so I got 36 bars of a song. The ones that are really tough for me are bars 24, 25, and 26, right? I can sit there and I can practice 24, 25, and 26. I don't have to play bars 1 through 23, right, every single time. Sometimes I want to. Sometimes I want to go back, right, to bar 20, right, to kind of roll into it. But like I don't have to do all that over again, and I can hyper focus on those pieces until I get them right. And then in a live performance, right? Yeah, I got butterflies in my stomach, but I know I just have to get those 3 bars right one time, right? And then you hit that euphoric like point of having overcome that challenge, and like the rest of the song is gravy. But like the inherent design of Bloodborne like prevents you from doing that thing, which I realize now is just a very native, inherent part of the tapestry of how a lot of human beings learn.
And I think in terms of the enjoyment piece of that as well is significant. We've talked about it in terms of of Call of Duty and Battlefield, right? Like the quickness back into a match, the quickness back into an action versus the respawn if you're not spawning with your squad and having to run across a map to get back into combat, like is very similar to that Trials instant restart versus the Bloodborne that you're talking about. Like how quickly can you get back to that either challenge, growth opportunity, or fun is significant.
All right. Did you want to real quick talk about PopSlinger?
I'll come back to PopSlinger next week. So just for the sake of time, let's move on.
All right, cool. All right. Game Logic. You've been playing, going back to, or I shouldn't say go back, because I think you've been playing this for a little bit. Red Dead Redemption 2.
I've been playing this for years, Tao. Death by 1,000 cuts. No, I mean it's been enjoyable, right? Uncharted, Lost Thieves collection, and then Red Dead Redemption 2 has made for a lot of very fulfilling, right, really meaty gameplay content over the last week or so. But yeah, I've gone back to Red Dead Redemption 2. I am now like 33%, like about a third of the way through the game, which is definitely, finally feels rewarding and enjoyable. Man, you have to, I mean, I know people love this game, like, you have to want to get through it. Like, there's so much, and I get it, like, the things people love about it are the narrative and the immersion and the feeling that you're in the old Wild West, right? But if you're a challenge player and a progression player, there's so much filler in this game. So many things that are not even necessary. I mean, they're character development pieces, and I think that's important, right? Even in a movie, right? I insist on character development in movie and television shows, and I appreciate in a 22 episode season that you get like those quiet episodes that are about nothing but dialogue and like moving a character forward, right, 1 or 2 steps. But man, it's hard in Red Dead Redemption 2. There are some of those set pieces, there are lengthy pieces of dialogue, there are encounters where nothing happens but people speak. And whether it's the right perspective or the wrong perspective, maybe I'm in that kind of the Division 2 mode, where when I step up to that game for a night of gameplay, I measure my output of it based on how many gunfights I get in. And I've had nights where there's no gunfight, right? And those are hard nights. And I'm like, when the heck did I get done? And a lot of times, we go back to the Bloodborne discussion, right? A lot of those are surprise ambush pop-up gunfights where you're like totally unprepared. And if you lose, one night I lost a gunfight to some bounty hunters. When I went back to the area, they happened to still be in the vicinity, and I was able to get revenge. That was thoroughly satisfying, right? And I mean, we started throwing down, and I didn't even realize it was the same guys, right? Until I had taken them out. I was like, oh, those are the same guys who took me out last time. But then there was another night where I had a gunfight, and I came back to those areas, like, and those guys were nowhere to be seen. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Again, just like we talked about in Bloodborne. So I respawned. I went back to where I was. I rode my stinking horse all the way back over here at a grand, like, 5 miles per hour. Right, get over here and no gunfight, right? Like, and I've played an hour and there's no gunfight, no combat. So it's tough, but I've had like really great nights where I've had like 2 or 3 gunfights, a big hand-to-hand combat battle. It's also very difficult to kind of tell, if in a night of gaming, if you get 5 like encounters, right? It's virtually impossible to tell whether those encounters are side missions or part of the main campaign, right? Often, like very frequently, you go to do something very innocuous, like fishing, right? And then the Pinkertons show up, right? And you realize, oh, this is a drumbeat in the main campaign. Like the story just like progressed a step forward. And again, it's a uncanny valley, right? Because you're like, yes, the story progressed forward, but there was no action and no throwing down. So are you really satisfied? There's a part of you that is. There's a part of you that isn't. Then that causes an effect where, like, there was a night where I was, like, so on edge. It was, like, every single time I was like, this is a campaign thing. Like, this is going to go sideways. Like, so many times. And I guess that's immersion and, like, a feeling of maybe a reality. Like, every time you engage in dialogue, one-on-one with a character or an NPC or somebody you're meeting for the first time, and you just have that hair standing up on the back of your head, and you're like, this conversation is about to go sideways. It's always about you feel like you're kind of subconsciously reaching for the pistol, and then it happens, right? And then sometimes you walk away. Like the other night I had a series of encounters with like two families who were in a feud, and I provided escort, but it was like an hour and a half of like run and fetch missions and like tense dialogue, and then like nothing, right? So it's just this constant roller coaster, right, to get through, what is essentially that game is supposed to be like 49 hours, right, to get through the main campaign. So it's rough, and it's those nights that are like supremely satisfying and feel like you're in an episode of Gunsmoke, and you thoroughly get and understand why you have spent the time, right, plying the waters to get to that point. But then there are other nights you're like, man, they could have cut this whole section of the game out. Like, I don't know why I'm bothering. And quite honestly, you're encouraged, I'm encouraged to like drop it. Like, is it really worth it to expend a whole night of gaming, for just talking? And that's not like, oh, it's a walking simulator type of thing, right? I've played Death Stranding Director's Cut. I think that's a great game. The solitude and stuff you feel walking across the plane is an emotional event. I don't necessarily always feel that same hook with Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm still in that mode where I feel like a lot of it is just tedium and chores, and I'm like, I do my chores before I game, right? I don't feel like washing dishes, right, when I play my video game. So, and maybe it's a comment on the game's quality too. When it does hit its high points are so great that you just want more and more and more of that. And when it hits that high note, man, and you get dropped back into the valley of like just mundanity, then yeah, it's rough. It's a good game though. I'm having a good time on those good nights. I'm having not so great a time on those bad nights.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you like what drives you to keep playing, but I'm assuming it's the highs that you want to get to the high again, or I mean like.
It's the highs. It's like, unfortunately, like we sometimes talk a lot about on the show. Like, it's a little bit of it is a feeling of obligation of like, we're required to play like the what's noted out in the community as like the best games ever. So there's a little bit of that. But yeah, but really it's outside of the podcast itself. It's the highs. Like I love the gunfights. One of the things that's disappointing, I guess, is because of those lows and how lengthy they are. I'm playing a run on PC and I'm playing a run on Xbox, and I hit these points where I was like, oh, in this run I'm going to focus on being a bounty hunter, and on this run I'm going to focus on hunting and trapping. And then, there was a night I came back to it after one of those low nights of like spending the whole night talking, and I'm like, yeah, two beans in a bucket, man. I'm done with that. Let's, I'm just going to try and figure out how to get through the campaign because I can't be here for 140 hours of content. I got other games to play.
Nice. All right. DB, any comments or any questions? No? All right. I'm going to jump into my one other game that I actually played this week. So I went back to Forza Horizon 5. I was playing that with my son a couple nights ago. So it was nice. We actually jumped into a convoy, which is a co-op or multiplayer session you can start up, and it seems to be working now. We were able to play quite a few races, and then the convoy just like quit on it. We just like both left it. Does
the old thing of like you driving by a drivatar and honking your horn and they join you for a convoy, because they took that, that was in 3, I think they took it out in 4. Did they put that back in 5?
I know you can do like some quick chats with people. I don't know if you can like just quick join a convoy on that. I've never really tried that part of it. I usually just go into like the menu system and create the convoys that way. So I'm not sure if you can join a convoy that way anymore or not. Because I know that was kind of funny that you mentioned that. Because I was waiting for my son. He was the leader at the point when we were actually in the convoy. He was going through, picking the race and, picking his cars and all that. So he has to actually pick everything himself before the other players can join. So I was waiting for him, and this guy had rolled by, and he's like, he he was doing the quick chat, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for like a certain area or something like that." I'm like, "Ah," and I'm like trying to figure out how to even do the quick chat anymore because I hadn't played it for so long. So, but I didn't when I did it, just that brief like 20 seconds. I didn't see any way to quick join like that. But they might be in there. I just might not have seen it. So it was kind of nice that you can kind of chat that quick though with people. And, I knew what he wanted, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I don't know," or whatever the little canned response they have in there. So he's like, "All right," and he just like drove away. So it was kind of cool. Yeah, we were just doing a bunch of races, across the maps.
You didn't pull the old man on him and tell him, you go 3 miles down that way, turn right, at Old Man Buzzard's barn, and
there's a crooked tree, then you take a left. No, I didn't feel like reefing that night. So, no, yeah, we just did a bunch of races, and it was fun to race together. So, but man, I forgot. Like, if you do like one little mistake in that game, though, and you're pretty much toast. Like in those races for the most part. We kind of caught up a couple times, but it just like once again you just like kind of spun out or hit a wall, and it's just like boom, everybody just passes you. So, but it was fun. I like when you can play with somebody, it's always nice. So, gonna keep playing.
Have you raced the Goliath yet?
Yeah, I did that one. Yeah, I was like 21 minutes, I think, when I did it or so. Yeah, that's a long one.
DBq, have you raced the Goliath?
When is this going to end? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's the Goliath. I don't know what I was thinking. So yeah, that was a long one.
Have you raced the Goliath, DB?
Yeah, it's like the whole map. It's like a whole map, right? The whole map race. Yeah, so it takes a while. Yeah, so just prepare for that one. Make sure you have time. I think there's another one that's like it was like half the time maybe, or like just about 3/4 of the time, but. Like Goliath, yeah, it goes forever. So I think that was another one where I was going pretty good, like halfway through the race, and then and I did this a while back, a few months ago or a couple months ago, and so I did one little mistake, and then I was like, I don't think I ever got past like 6th or 7th, I think, because they were just gone. So and it wasn't like I had it on like a harder difficulty level; it was like the medium level or whatever the default level is. But you just gotta either restart, which I wasn't gonna restart with the Goliath because. I was pretty good ahead of him too for most of the race, and then, like I said, just that one little mistake. So, but it happens.
I think.
All right.
I think in that race, yep. I suspect I have a strong feeling that there's rubber banding too, because I noticed that like mistakes are much more costly near the end of the race. The enemy AI seems to catch up a heck of a lot faster and be a lot more challenging in the last couple miles of the race.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. It's a racing game for you. All right, so from racing to flying, game logic. You still going through with your XPlane 11?
I am, and I've had a really good time. Again, playing on the Logitech G with the Logitech G X52 flight control system. Put in enough time this week that I've got an itch to put a yoke system or maybe the Airbus system on my list. But I don't know. That I feel like is going to require me playing, more XPlane 11 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. But I had a really great time. Again, mostly what I did was try to finish up my flight training this week. I'm a really good, solid, confident, and comfortable visual flyer, and latch onto the plane physics and the differences in the flight models. Each of those games I play, what I'm not great at is instrumentation. And there were several lessons this week that I was like, why would I ever use these instruments to fly? Like, I can see the ground. So I really had to kind of dig deep and pull some of those things apart and figure out how to fly the course discrepancy indicator, which I'm like, why in the world would there be that thing when you have GPS? So there were some challenging missions. But what I really love about XPlane 11 in particular during the flight training is the fact that you get graded. It not only does it help you understand whether you're doing well or not, but again, I comment again about that feeling of euphoria that kind of drives you forward. On the landing sequencing flight training, I got I think like 100 on course following and then like 90 something on the landing. So. It's just really enjoyable flying that Cessna and like coming down and almost touching down at SeaTac, and then when you're low speed coming in right over the field and like the slightest breeze really starts to yaw the aircraft and compensating for that. And again, feeling confident and putting it down. Of course, one of the things that is always bothersome is, flying the plane feels one way, but like being on the ground and trying to control your ground speed and getting the rear wheel to touch down and steer the aircraft and taxi is always, feels like you can be really good at flying and you can be really horrible at being on the ground. So really enjoyable experience. Flight control system performed really well. So it's, one of the first times that I've really spent a lot of time with that particular peripheral. So good times.
And not Flight Simulator. XPlane, that came out the same year, right? The Flight Simulator did? The newest one?
No. XPlane 11 is significantly older. I think it's like a 2015 game. So it used to compete with Microsoft Flight Simulator 10, which was kind of like their last big hurrah, and stuck around much longer than that simulator did. Well, that simulator stuck around. Me trying to play it, Microsoft Flight Simulator 10, I just ran into lots of flight planning problems and file system problems, and eventually, I just got tired of dumping time into it, and it being broken halfway through. So XPlane 11 had kind of clambered to the top of the heap as far as being the reliable flight simulator that a lot of people were playing, until this very last iteration of Microsoft Flight Simulator kind of came back and stole the crown.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it came out at the same time. All right. DB. Playing a little bit of Destiny 2. A couple different systems, actually. Consoles.
Yeah, I mean, it is a few weeks before the next expansion, so it is the clean out your inventory, make sure that the currency that used to do something that's no longer going to do something, that you spend it all. It's starting to stack bounties for the next level progression. It's I've done as much as, there's more to do. There's always more to do. I have over time come to my own peace, made my own peace with the fact that I'm not going to complete all the quests. I'm not going to clean out all those quest logs. I'm going to do the things that I enjoy. And at the same time, this last week I went back and booted up one of my secondary characters just to start leveling them up again as well. So, which has been fun because it's been probably over a year since I spent time with any other class than my main class. But really the big Destiny news is not the Witch Queen. And since I came late to the podcast as a wild polka podcaster jumping in, did you guys talk about the Sony Bungie acquisition or? All right. So yeah, I mean, we
didn't get a chance to.
Right. This is the bigger Destiny news of the week is Monday's announcement of Sony buying Bungie for $3.6 billion. And then today you also get an announcement that Sony's offering up a little over 1 million in incentives for,
I think the incentives are actually 1.2 billion.
That's for the incentives, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's a B in the incentives, right? It's a 1.2 billion for talent incentives to stick around. So, which is one heck of a cash infusion for your workforce. So, granted, that is to say that in light of the IGN article of some of Destiny's kind of systematic problems, or not Destiny, but Bungie's workforce harassment pieces that have plagued other studios, that whether or not everybody who's there should be sticking around or that people have left, but that just to recognize that there is some of that out there as well. But yeah, so a lot of Bungie news this week in terms of the viability, long-term viability of the studio, of Sony not making any direct movements to pull Destiny onto only PlayStation platforms. They've talked about keeping it multi-platform. A lot of the speculation and logic around this is Bungie's ability to sustain a live service game and work through a lot of the kinks and the revenue models of that, because that is not something that is in Sony's portfolio at this point. and I could see, how that helps build out that portfolio for their studios as well. Any thoughts? I mean, that's kind of my overview, my analysis. I'll be interested to see if this means that future Bungie projects, right? We already know that there's a couple that they had some money from NetEase to work on a mobile game. They've talked about that they have a team working on a different project. Whether that becomes something that's Sony exclusive, that seems potential, especially now that Sony exclusive means PlayStation and PC, because with Nixies, they're able to port things over and have been doing that. So I could see that other Bungie things could certainly, just like Minecraft has stayed multi-platform, Destiny may stay multi-platform as well. I have appreciated as a day one Destiny fan, I have appreciated all the Hawkmoon jokes and other types of exclusive PlayStation content that was locked behind PlayStation and Bungie's agreement in the first year of the original Destiny with strikes and certain other content. But I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It's hard to say at this point, but like a lot of these acquisitions, this one seems pretty tame compared to 12 billion for Zynga, or certainly the Activision Blizzard King one as well. So we will see what this all brings. But yeah, I in some ways I'm very interested to know what this means going forward. I don't really see this as, I think the other interesting piece of this is the history of Bungie as an on again, off again corporate partner relationship, right? Like, yes, Sony has bought them. So did Microsoft. They have had agreements with Activision. They were still a separate, they only were publishing through Activision. But how much of this is part of Bungie's culture, that it is this ebb and flow of wanting to be independent, but realizing the challenges of stability that come with that, and if this ends up any different than the others.
Yeah, wanting to be independent, but constantly in search of a sugar daddy. My description I've been talking about is, Bungie has been married and divorced twice. Like, is this really the person that you want to re-up for, like, for that third ride? And again, they weren't, as you mentioned, they weren't married to Activision, but it was a monogamous relationship, and they weren't seeing other people. So, it'll be interesting, as you mentioned, right, to see how it turns out. I mean, to me, as you talked about, right, as we've talked about over the years, right, we've seen lots of multiplayer games, lots of games as a service come and go, not sustained for anywhere near the length of time as Destiny, as an entire franchise. If you then connect Destiny and Destiny 2 together, they have got that formula on lock. There are lots of members of the community who, say that they don't like the game while they're currently putting in thousands of hours in it, over the time period. But we've mentioned on the show how so many games come out and we see that they are attempts to be a Destiny-like game, and to figure out how to determine, how to do games as a service, as you mentioned, right, over a very long period of time. And as Ubisoft has figured out, the formula for open world, as Sony has figured out the formula for third-person action-adventure, near-wide linear path games, right? Bungie is a studio that's figured out this game as a service with a continuing economy, and that is something, like you said, Sony doesn't. This is very much to me like a buy the teacher kind of move, right? It's get Bungie, disseminate that talent and that brain share right throughout the company so that more studios can figure out how to do that and how to do it reliably. For whatever it's worth, prediction, it's not really a prediction. I think what I suspect is going to happen is, Destiny might continue, but it also wouldn't surprise me to hear that this Witch King thing is the last swan song for Destiny, and that it's just kind of even keel O&M kind of going forward here. And as you mentioned, right, their next big thing, right, will be something original and will potentially be Sony exclusive. The thing that throws questions at that, though, is a couple weeks ago I was talking to some friends and other podcasters, and I'm like, a Sony exclusive game can sell 20 million units. And that's a good news story. However, the install base of the Sony PlayStation platform, we think, is at least 140 million people. And so, is it a success story when, like, a big game that you guarantee success out of sells to 15%, right? A little less than that of your install base? I don't know. It certainly is successful when you compare it to other people, but if other people aren't your yardstick and you just want, like, the best for you, clearly, obviously, around the boardroom, you can see that people would be wanting, like, demanding higher levels of saturation, right, amongst the space, and clearly a games as a service kind of model that has that stick-to-itiveness that keeps people engaged over the long term would be something that they would look for. So it'll be interesting to see how they go forward. I would personally like to see, a Killzone or a Resistance IP game come back. I would love to see Bungie take on something like that. I would love to see Bungie work with Guerrilla Games together to do something with Killzone. I would love to see Bungie and Insomniac working together to put some Resistance out there. Even if it were in a game as a service model with continuing content. I think that could be, particularly exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
who's gonna make the mag joke? Come on, massive action battles.
What studio did mag? I forget.
Oh, now I gotta look this up. Oh, go ahead, Kyle. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, in the article here that I posted that Game Industry is now they say after the deal closes, Bungie will be an independent subsidiary, of SIE run by a board of directors, because the CEO and there's other people. Is that? Are they just talking corporate speak, like saying, "Hey, we own them, but they're going to do their own thing," or is this like we just own them? Like I don't know why they put that in there. Like, and that's just me not knowing like business speak. Like I work in the office and stuff, but I don't know like high level stuff like that. But I don't know if either of you kind of can interpret that.
I feel like there's gonna be a little bit of both. I feel like Sony is definitely gonna say, hey, do what you want with 75%, right, of your time, but 25% we're gonna carve off, you're gonna reserve for us, and you're gonna do a thing that we want you to do. But I think they're gonna largely be able to continue to do. I think I perceive that the structure of this deal, they are not going to be, and this is, I feel like this because the whole deal itself feels very not Sony to me in the first place. I don't think these guys are going to become a Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Insomniac type of studio that does, that does exclusive, first party, single player, heavy narrative, heavy cinematic type of stuff in the Sony style. I think this is first of all, it's a keep away move. I don't think, I don't know that Microsoft would have really acquired, there's speculation that Microsoft was going to acquire them or might have been trying to acquire them. I don't, again, I don't know that Bungie would get back in with Microsoft after breaking away. But I definitely feel like there was concern that they might be snapped up by somebody else, like an Amazon or a Google or, some other large corporation or a Tencent, right? And the lineage of Bungie goes far back. I think a lot of people think about them as the Halo studio who became Destiny's studio, but like before that, they made Myth, right? And Myth 2, which was which was a fantasy style RTS, right? And then before that, they were doing Marathon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And even, the original Halo that they showed at Macworld was an RTS type of aspect.
Yeah, so I think they've got pretty wide-ranging aspirations. I think they themselves want to become something that is more akin to a publisher than just a mega studio. At a certain point, a studio of that size becomes questionable on how to maintain that as a going concern. I think that's why I think the incentive plan is there. There's a lot of thought that the incentive plan is there to keep people around. I think the incentive plan is also there to encourage people to leave. I don't know that a year or two from now, as Sony wants to convert Bungie over to doing some things for them, that they necessarily want the plus 500 people hangers on, that are required to make the big Destiny monstrosity of an engine go. Right? I personally feel like they want to see that team lean out and some people depart over time, and then do some kind of retooling, restructuring, to kind of start pointing them in the content vectors that they're going to want them engaged in for the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had my love-hate relationship with Destiny as a game. But do you really, like when you mentioned Game Logic, that they're kind of just going to have Destiny coast? Were you talking about Destiny 2 or just Destiny as a franchise? And they're just going to be like, all right, let's, you guys done Destiny now for a while, and yeah, they do have another working IP, supposedly, that they're working on, or a new IP that they're working on. Do you think they will totally just like, all right, we're kind of done with Destiny for now, and maybe one day we'll come back here, or are you saying like maybe a Destiny 3 or whatever the next installment will come out?
I think something about sunsetting Destiny 2 has to be under discussion at the really. Again, I go back to that lineage, right? We did Marathon, we did Myth RT, 2 iterations of Myth RTS, we did Halo. Then we did Destiny, right? And every time they've killed a beast that is of a slightly different nature than the last thing they did. They've done it for a long period of time, right? But eventually, there's always a turning of the page. And I'm like, I gotta look at Destiny 2, and think about, you look at that thing as a 7-year thing, and I'm like, some people, some senior developers who are super highly talented, gotta be thinking about like, okay, enough of that. Like, I want to go do something different, which again might go to the incentive package of either of both keeping people around, but also, right, super highly talented people who make super high salaries, right, and are either camping out and don't want to do anything other than Destiny 2, right, or don't necessarily want to do the next thing up for Sony, right, might, need some encouragement to go do something else so that we can, convert the studio over to what we need.
Yeah.
So there's at least one expansion announced after Witch Queen. So there's Lightfall after that. And, at this point, that's 23, maybe, and the fact that it would be really interesting for all the games industry speculation around when they announced that this Destiny was going to be a 10-year game, that it's going to be a 10-year game, right? Like the fact that we're in 22, and if Lightfall comes out in 23, you probably are looking at something that is ultimately a 10-year game. And whether it does go into maintenance mode after that, or knowing the lineage of who's there and the MMO aspects of the lineage of who's still there, that if it does transition into something more WoW-like in terms of, not necessarily in terms of gameplay, but just in terms of maintenance, right? Like there's some smaller stuff. Maybe there's still some seasons, but you may not be, whether or not the story continues on or if it just becomes the sandbox. It'll be interesting to see how that goes in terms of that.
Yeah. Do they do like, is it like one major update or expansion, or is it like a couple a year? I haven't really been following the expansions.
Usually one. I mean, in the last couple, it's been one. Other than the first year when they had 2 expansions, it's been one major expansion. And now that they're in like the season pass model of things, that there's a couple of those each year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure because, like I said, I hadn't been following. All right. Any other comments on Destiny or Sony? All right. Game launching ahead, Red Dead Redemption 2 again on. If we still had time, was that because you've been playing this for so long? Is that why you put it on there twice?
No. So that section is now labeled anything else or what's next. So it's a spot in the agenda where if we've gotten through everything that we've played, to just kind of talk about, or just mention, what's up next. What's up next for me is playing more Red Dead Redemption 2.
All right, nice. And I'll be doing more Pokemon and, of course, Zenith. And I'll talk about it here in the next segment here for our Pickz PlayZ. So Sony, once again, Sony first-party titles are now being ported to PC. Excuse me. So you have twice as many ways to get into Sony's stable of properties. So play one, and for anyone who does not want to get down to the Sony path this time, your job is to find a title similar to SIE PC port and play that. So DB, you're going to do Spider-Man Remastered on the PS5. Game Logic, you're doing continuing on Uncharted, A Legacy of Thieves collection, and then the other game that I actually bought and haven't played yet was Horizon Zero Dawn for this purpose, and that was probably one of besides Spider-Man, that was probably one of the games on the Sony platform that I was really looking interesting to me. So I'm glad it's on PC now and then that I actually have PC now that I can play it on. So I bought that on Steam's Chinese New Year sale. So sale for everything nowadays. I thought I just saw too that they're going to be upping their, I guess, sales frequency or something like that on Steam.
They announced their schedule for this year. There's a number of them. Yeah, it's almost
right. Yeah,
once a month there's something going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always a Steam sale going on about something. I think the big drumbeat change is that usually when those are going to occur are kind of shrouded in mystery, and it's a whole guessing game and a whole, game journalist industry has cropped up around like trying to predict when the Steam sale is going to be, which is, it's kind of like the Apple iPhone announcement. It's like, here's my great guess. I'm like, dude, it's the same time every year. Like, you're not impressing anyone. So I think it was just a little bit more of them coming clean and being blatantly obvious about like, save 10 or 20 extra bucks, from the fast food from the week before because the sale's going to be this week.
Yeah, and don't they have like daily sales or weekly sales now? Anyways, like it's usually like a game or two. It's usually not
there's
a whole thing like the
sale,
usual.
and then there's a weekend sale all the time.
Yeah, there's always on sale, right. and then they always have I think the things that bring to my mind that are constantly going is like every other week is like a publisher sale. So like some publishers' entire catalog is discounted.
Yeah, I've been noticing that a lot lately on the eShop too, or for Nintendo's sales. So
I didn't really
publisher sale. I
didn't really think about it until you brought it up, but I think that I realize that that's probably partially a response to the whole Epic, one free game every 2 weeks or something move is to just always encourage people to have a reason to come back to take a look at sifting through the 12,000 games per year that come out on the Steam platform and that are pushed in your face and make it difficult for you to filter and actually find the gems. So I guess that's a reason to slog through it.
Yeah, there's quite a lot out there. And my Steam games are starting to collect there also. So yeah, but I'll be jumping into Horizon Zero Dawn hopefully this weekend or in the coming days. All right, gentlemen, anything else you wanted to talk about or comment on? All right, we will call it a night. So next week, please join us. We'll be back with another two-man show featuring Game Logic as the host, and Mr. DBqHams will be his co-host. Thank you, DB and Game Logic, for tonight's discussion about games and stories and tangents, as we're out to do. Please take care of yourselves out there, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.